What is up, Generals? We are back with Ultimate General Civil War. We're playing the J&P Rebalance mod as of the time of this recording, version 1.24, I think. That sounds right. And the time has come for us to jump into the battles of Gaines Mill and Malvern Hill. So this video will only be Gaines Mill. And then you should expect Malvern Hill sometime in the near future. These two battles, I think, are best played in relatively short proximity to each other because very often you're fighting with functionally the same army in both fights. I have exhausted the pool of weapons that I have access to. For the most part. And you'll notice that we have come up quite a bit shy of the number of units we could create. I simply can't justify the expense of a full-blown colonel at a little over $10,000 per shot. Several of the units are 1,000 men in order to spread muskets around versus the 1,250 that has become my standard. We stood up a bunch of new units, especially artillery, because we had plenty of guns. So I've purchased several units with 3-inch ordnance guns, despite, and I know you guys know, I have a pretty low opinion of that weapon in this game. I think some guns, even if they're not great guns, are better than no guns. And the 3-inch ordnance has got a place as a medium-range shell gun. Now, I still think the 6-pound might be better in that role. I don't know. But the 3-incher has a bit of extra reach over the 6. And, excuse me. Oh, man. Okay. Probably edit that out, huh? So here we're doing the kind of the briefing for the mission. TLDR, the Blues are camping the river, and you got to go kick them out. It's just kind of like Port Republic, you know. They're having these sick barbecues, and you know they're like calling our moms fat and stuff, and we got to go beat them up. There's a couple different cool phases of the battle, and the map. One of the things I like about this particular map is that the map grows as the battle expands. So the first part suggests, hey, move in the direction of this farm on the hilltop and, you know, maybe wait for your reinforcements or whatever. Be careful of attacking the front because they've got, you know, a pretty solid defensive position and, you know, all that kind of fun stuff. And to the game's credit, they do have an excellent defensive position. Paradoxically, I would never suggest that if you were playing on the Union side that you stay in those defensive positions. And you know, at some juncture, I mean, I did a Union series that played through it Major General, and you saw in that, if you've watched it, that I didn't stay in the trenches. I left and I fought. I met the Confederates at the river and I fought them there. And that's, I think, the advisable strategy for the Union. And I don't think that this particular, that the mod would change that. So I pull out a couple of my 1st Division elite troops, the ones who've been around for a while, and I slot in several of the militia units. And the thought process here is that when I'm getting reinforcements from the left especially, I'm going to be already engaged, and I need those units to come online basically ASAP. So they, as soon as it's practical, they need to be in position. You know, they need to be moving quickly to fight. And I can't rely, I don't think, on the militia units to keep their speed up and also just to be in a condition to fight when they get where they're getting. So I bring in the militia because The early fighting is when I have the least clear, direct, obvious advantage. Take whichever wording you want to go with as far as that's concerned. And so that's what I do. We're gonna kind of use the strat. There's a couple different ways you can go about this battle. Evidently, people sometimes attack from the swamp. I can't imagine why you'd want to do that, but evidently it works. But I much prefer swinging my entire command to the right of the map and attacking from that direction. I think I sketched out my broad plan at the end of the tail end of the last video, and basically what I do here is I enact that plan, and then I make some small adjustments where I need to, but for the most part I think it's a pretty clear plan. And despite the fact that this game repeatedly throws very nifty curveballs my way and kind of makes me kind of call an audible on my game plan, in this particular instance, more or less, I'm able to just enact the plan and remain flexible, but for the most part, we're fine. One of the things that I think plays a bit differently than my expectation is relatively early on, I engaged 25th Militia along with 2nd Dragoon and 6th Ranger, and I end up pulling a 2nd Brigade of Infantry down. And the reason I've done that is I wasn't terribly concerned about the single star units of skirmishers that the AI had here, but when I saw 1st U.S. Sharpshooter come on the map, and that's that two-star skirmisher unit with a little over 540 some odd men, when I saw them come, that was a target worthy of engaging. And why do I say that? So as much as this battle is one of maneuver and position, and it is, my overall grand campaign objective remains and always shall be destroy the Union Army at every opportunity. Keep the enemy force pool as small as possible. Force them to roll on that reinforcement table as often as you can. Now, in his most recent playthrough, Something Compass got a little unlucky and had several repeated crack rolls. And that's just the nature of random tables, I suppose. But on average, you shouldn't diverge too strongly from that norm. So why specifically 1st U.S. Sharpshooter? So it turns out, as spoiler alert, we end up getting that unit to surrender after shaking it for a while and then charging it in melee. It turns out they only have Springfield carbines. It's the 1859 Cav and Skirmisher carbine. It may in fact be a Smith carbine. I don't remember, or a Sharp carbine. I don't know. It's a shit carbine. It's the entry tier level carbine. And based on the kinds of guns that I capture at the end of this battle, I think that the enemy's armory score has been kept pretty well low, which is good and bad. Bad because I can't steal good stuff. Good because I'm not getting reamed by high-end artillery. So I captured that unit, and it turns out they've only got the Springfield carbine, or the Sharp carbine, the 1859, the older one, with it's 300 range, pretty decent rate of fire, but it's got a really wide range of damage that it can hit with, so it can be really great or it can be utter garbage. So it's weird that that's a sharpshooter unit armed with close range carbines, but it is what it is. The more important thing as far as I'm concerned is it's a 2-star unit. So anywho, yeah, with the majority of the army, we continue to set up our blocking positions. So we're moving the majority of the army up, and because I've seen 1st U.S. Sharpshooter and then 1,000 other skirmishers, the thought process is, why don't I go ahead and detail one more unit of infantry and come in and try and mop this stuff up. Usually I am hesitant to launch into a frontal attack on the Union position near their southern flag. I think it's the Boatswain's Hill, I'm pretty sure. But it's the one that's lower of the two. I don't ever want to attack that one directly if I can avoid it. But there's some targets here that I think are worth the effort. And I mount up the cav. The thought process, I see 1 and eventually 2 supply wagons that are unsupported. I'm thinking, okay, well, I can go and scoop those up. That's why I moved 6 Ranger and 2nd Dragoon over to try and get those things while detailing 25th and 26th Militia to go deal with those skirmishers. On that topic. So there's been some modifications to my naming convention. I realized I was getting really haphazard with, infantry and rifles and a bunch of other names, and the initial intention with the light infantry units. So, had been to keep them in the same numerology as the regular infantry and just make light infantry like a modifier. And I realized that I had been not great about that. So there was like 4th light infantry, and then there was 4th infantry and that kind of thing. So, what I'm doing right now is everyone's just infantry unless they've got no experience and they're using a smoothbore weapon. Then they're militia, and that's when I know, I need to behave a certain way with them. Otherwise, if they've got a star, if they've got experience, if they've got rifles, infantry. I might do like I did in the Union campaign and make a couple of units guard status if they do something special or they earn 3 stars or, 2 stars or whatever. We'll get there maybe at some juncture in the campaign. I don't know. And then the light infantry units have all been reflagged as either rangers or skirmishers or snipers. And we only have 1 sniper unit at the moment, and I don't think that they show. No, they do. They show up towards the tail end of the battle. Everybody else, if they're light infantry, they're going to be rangers. And that's not really based on any kind of historical anything at all, but it tells me the role of the unit. So yeah, we're over here charging their sharpshooters. They surrender surprisingly quickly. And I think a lot of that might be due to the fact that they're really pretty far removed from the remainder of their command. So they're very isolated. And the AI, I think, just realizes like, oh, well, that's all she wrote. The majority of my command is getting posted on the top of this hill here by the farmhouse. And it's the Sharp 59. Okay. 6th and 8th artillery are being tasked with counter battery work. So James's are actually pretty good counter battery guns. And surprise, surprise, the 3-inch ordnance is terrible. It's a counter battery gun. It just doesn't do a lot of good work in the course of this battle. So I'm trying to eke 5th infantry forward. I'm trying to edge 8th artillery forward. I'm trying to get the AI to shoot anything but the James gun unit, because the James gun unit only has 4 or 5 guns. It's small. I want them to put rounds into literally anything else. It turns out by the end of the battle that I'm facing off against 10-pound parrots. So the James is going to be fine, but is outnumbered, and the 3-inch ordnance is just thoroughly outclassed. And I realize that, so let me take a step back. My initial plan was to hold on the northern side of this river, and then when reinforcements came across or came onto the board, I would push south and then flank and attack the position. I realize I'm losing the artillery duel with Wooten, the 400 some odd man artillery unit by the northern flag. I realize I'm losing that duel, and I'm taking casualties that are unsustainable or just not good at far too high a rate as to be sustainable. So assessing the situation on the ground, I move 19th Rifles, 9th Militia, and 10th Rifles all across the river, and then attack in a division abreast across the flank of the position by that flag, who's currently held by Wooten or Woden or whomever, and Chapman. And the thought process is essentially, yes, they're in trenches, but we're coming in from the flanks and we're going to hit them 3-1, or 3 units shooting at 1. So 1 unit might take a beating, and 19th Rifles does take a good solid couple volleys, but we've got enough units coming in for the attack that it should be okay. And that it mostly works out. They don't really inflict all that many casualties, but no one likes being shot in the flank. And eventually Chapman just kind of bolts. He's like, all right, cool, I'm out. So we also get a couple of good volleys directly into Whedon. Wendo, I don't know. It's a W. I'm sorry, I can't read it. We get a couple of good volleys into that guy, and he's out of here. He's like, this is not great. I'm impressed. Weldon, W name, Whedon, whoever. He gets a volley off at like point blank. Now, the fact that he was good at long range and shit at close in the moment suggests to me, oh, these are 10-pound parrots. Later on, when I take a look at what I capture at the end of the battle, yeah, those are 10-pound parrots. So, super fun times, guys. But even with the reduced damage curves from musketry, no artillery unit in the open can stand to 3 brigades that are pouring musket fire into it. So eventually he decides to beat feet. And Chapman does this thing, I think it's very frustrating, where the AI can click into the entrenchments, these flags, and it's weird, like it will treat them as if they're in the entrenchments, despite the fact that this sprite on the screen isn't there yet. So I'm getting flank shots or whatever, all that kind of silliness. At the same time, Chapman is so woefully out of position, numbers, whatever, in that location that it's just not going to go well for him. And as you can see, this is, I think, some of the fastest casualties that we've seen inflicted on anybody in the campaign thus far. He enters melee with 3 brigades who are pretty well formed, and then also 1st Artillery gets a volley into him, and also 5th and 23rd Infantry are supporting from the rear. So Chapman has a real bad day real quick. And that's about it. So I consolidate my position. I move 10, 9, and 19 into these woods, flanking the road near Boatswain Woods, this strip of woods, with the intention of getting more oblique fire into Griffin or anybody else who occupies that trench position. And at this point, the momentum would, in the past, I would have been like, I have the momentum, I should go into the attack. But there's 2 meta considerations that prevent me from doing so. The first is that I haven't gotten my reinforcements yet, and I know that the Union, let's pretend in universe that I have Cav Scouts doing some recon for me. But in game, out of game, I know that the Union's going to get reinforcements from the bottom right of the screen. In universe, it would be very easy to know, to assume that Brigadier General Fiasco has detailed some of the cavalry units to go reconnoiter the other Union corps moving to support this one, whoever the hell is in command. And I mean, so that being the case, I just stick it out. I say, okay, we have taken their one flag. It now lies upon them to take it back from us. And so if we can further entrench our foothold here and wait for reinforcements, we have functionally won the battle. I mean, we haven't won. At the moment, if the battle was to end in, however long it would take in game, we would get a draw at best, because we've inflicted more casualties than we've taken, and we've also captured one of the flags. I bring 2nd Dragoon up around to try and see if I can't take out this one artillery unit. I want to de-gun the Union at every possible opportunity. So the onus is now on the AI to come and take this flag back away from me. And if I remove their tools, like artillery, from, I'm pretty sure it's Whedon now. If I remove the tools that they have to strike at me with from safety, which is to say artillery, then the only recourse they have left is infantry. And infantry who attack, an unsupported infantry who attack a dug-in, rested opponent almost always lose, especially if that opponent has artillery support of its own. So I knock out the artillery unit, and then I see again that these supply wagons are unsupported, or I think they are, and I can go ahead and nab one. Turns out that they are supported, but that the support's too far away. So I managed to get one, but not the other, which is fine. So I get that one. I get out of there. Chapman gets a couple shots off, but I think I take like 5 losses, so it's totally worth it. And then I run those supplies back to my line. And I leave the supplies on because this is a long fight. And I don't know how long I'm going to have to wait until I get my second supply wagon from the other corps. Turns out I never do get that second supply wagon. Or if I do, I forget about it. So I'm reliant on captured Union supplies to equip my artillery to keep them banging away at full speed. So we get those reinforcements. Those are the veteran units that I had pulled out from the line of battle in the beginning of the fight, specifically so I could use them now, use their higher speed and everything else now. Additionally, this is Rebel Fiasco's core. So Rebel Fiasco, as a general level perk, has a plus 25% speed modifier. Then you're going to see that when the other general, Johnston? I think Johnston. English. The other general, who I am fairly certain is Johnston, gets his command on the field. I took the perk that gives them, I want to say, more accuracy, I think. Anywho, their troops are slow. They take a surprisingly long time to get into position, and I'm a pretty firm believer in mobility. So yeah. So the dragoons ride back behind the protection of the infantry brigades, as do the captured supplies. And then, the reinforcements continue their march onto, they're going to eventually get to the Confederate left. They're going to shore up the Confederate left. And actually the timing works out really great. These guys end up getting into position. Now they cross a huge swath of terrain. And that's one of the things that you got to think about as a Confederate commander is a lot of the missions have you marching over large portions of terrain. And on the Union side, I don't remember Bull Run, obviously, has you doing that, right? But from the Union side, I don't remember there being, in the early campaign, a lot of the time the Confederates come to you. Now that changes towards the latter parts of the war, which does mirror the actual conflict. And then you take a look at Second Bull Run, and then in that instance, the AI comes to you, or the Union comes to the Confederates, as do they at Antietam. So I suppose it ends up being pretty even. But in these early missions, you need to keep your force one that's fairly mobile, and all that fun stuff. Anywho, we get indications of Union reinforcements as I got my reinforcements at my spawn point. You notice the map expanded, and the Union gets their reinforcements too. So we're seeing the first hints of that right now in those skirmishers. Additionally, the Union is pushing north of its defended position at Boatswain Hill. And I don't know what the AI is looking to accomplish because there's 2 militia units there, and that's it. Unless their thought process is to outflank my position. I don't know what else they could be trying to accomplish. But, hey, whatever, it is what it is. So I was talking about speed. I was talking about keeping your mobile early on. That's all of these are things you got to consider in the opening phases of the Union or Confederate campaign. And then let's just get back to the overall strategy of the battle. I have this is my fortress, or my place that I'm going to call mine. And that is this sort of S-shaped position that I'm kind of occupying, anchored around the 3 brigades and 2 artillery batteries near the flag. I'm challenging the Union to come and take it from me. And they keep trying. They keep obliging me. And they keep bouncing off of the Confederate position. Now, unfortunately, these two militia units get chewed up pretty good because they keep launching these attacks. Like across the river, a brigade will charge me, just kind of like at River Crossing, whatever that one's called, Cross Keys. They what was the way that Panacroft put it? He recreated the Battle of Marathon. Like that. It was kind of like that. So in the middle, I'm very happy that the defensive line does work as a defensive line pretty well. But what I'm really, really ecstatic about is the efficacy of my Dragoons and the Rangers as they skirmish with the Union on the far right, or I guess Confederate left. It's really cagey back and forth play. I had to be very careful in terms of overextending myself and overcommitting myself and making sure I always had a good, safe direction to retreat from. And it went great. The two units here performed just exceptionally well. I have always been open about the fact that I had initially written off both skirmishers and cavalry in this game, and that I could scarcely have been more wrong about those unit types. You'll notice I don't feel confident advancing yet with 5th and 23rd, when 2 brigades of infantry support would likely help on my thrust towards McGee Hill. There are 2 Union brigades Union artillery brigades up at McGee, and I would like to take those guns out. But I don't have a clear picture of what awaits me over the crest of that hill. And so I leave it to my skirmish units to continue kind of skirmishing and probing the Union position until 13th and 1st Rifles get into position. And then once that happens, the Union position kind of collapses. But we I think, cagily give ground when we have to. We shoot and fight back when we have to. We keep them from taking too much territory. And then eventually more linear units get online, and things turn around just very quickly. On the Confederate left, Confederate right. Sorry, guys. On the left of the screen, which I'm pretty sure is the Confederate right, there is a very aggressive push against the 2 the 2 militia brigades. And I'm concerned about how to handle it, because if I give too much ground, they're going to wrap my flank. But if I stand and fight, they outnumber me 3-1, and they're 1 and 2 star infantry units, and I've got 2 brand new, totally green, fresh recruit units that are, just standing there in the woods with smoothbore percussion cap muskets or something like that. Like, it's just not going to go well for those units. So I'm very concerned about how to handle that. And ultimately what I end up doing is I end up pulling one of these brigades that came down off the map and having them, turn around and go join the 2 units up there in the defense of the Confederate right. But in the moment, we have the opportunity to reinitiate the offensive. These units get online, and I have to scarcely wait 1 beat before I start getting aggressive with them and I start advancing, because again, I want to take out that artillery. Also, my grand operation for this battle has always been to sort of use this position in the center by Boatswain's Woods as kind of a fulcrum around, or a hinge around which the Confederate army will rotate, and then, crush the Union army. We're going to push them into the swamp south of their current position and then envelop the last bit of it. I talked earlier about meta requirements, and I suppose I didn't finish that sentence. So the first meta requirement was that I knew there were going to be more reinforcements coming in off of the board edge to the bottom right, so that's why I didn't launch into the full attack on the Union position at the time. The second meta requirement is that I don't want to take the last flag until the absolute last moment if I can avoid it. So Buchanan comes screaming in after 26th, and I realize that I'm Confederate infantry, and I've got percussion cap muskets. There's exactly one thing those muskets are any good for, and that's for being used as a club. So I charge 25 and 26 in on Buchanan, and I rely on close order artillery support, and pretty rapidly Buchanan's desire to engage in melee with me evaporates. Right around the same time, we get the first bits of our second corps on the field. And it's right around now that I feel as if I could probably win this battle with the units that are currently engaged, and every additional unit that comes in off the board edge is just gravy. And a lot of that comes down to positioning. A lot of that comes down to, I think, probably optimal or near optimal perk choicing, whereas the AI is likely randomized, I'm thinking, in terms of what they choose. Buchanan routes in a weird direction, but I just charge him again, and he routes the other direction, so it's fine. But you can sort of see the Confederate attack beginning to take shape now. We have just a division line abreast with elements from I Corps' 1st and I want to say 4th Division, as well as the light elements providing flank security and then long range fires on the artillery. We're firing downhill. Yes, they're in woods and I'm in the open, but we're firing downhill, and that's a pretty significant bonus in this game, or buff in this game. So yeah. I don't know where their infantry has gone, but it's not it's not charging my command in the middle, which is what I would have done in the Union shoes. Any infantry of sufficient mass attacking from the south east, relative to this screen anyway, would have been attacking over good terrain to attack at Union troops or Confederate troops who likely would have been hard pressed to repel an attack. So you got a Blakely unit, and we got a 3-inch ordnance unit, and they take forever and a day to get into position, and that I'm convinced now that speed perk is worth its weight in gold on generals. I thought the same of the vanilla game, and it's just more powerful here. So yeah, speed, man. It's a big deal. 11th and the Dragoons are working to secure my southern flank. And we're just trying to, make sure that our command bumps up against the edge of the board. And we've got, they've got nowhere to squirt through. There's no opportunity for them to get to our soft rear or our artillery units. We want to make sure that they've got, that we're rested when we're going on the offensive, and that that there's not really a great place for them to go into attacking, into an attack posture. Which is partially why I'm not attacking further along the south yet, is I don't have enough troops online yet to comfortably launch into an offensive along the south, because I want to make sure that there's limited exposure to my flanks, and that I'm working to keep a methodical pace to my attack. But we're doing that. We're working on it. We're not sitting passively or sitting idly. Our units are resting when and if they need to, but for the most part, we're continuing to slowly eke out larger and larger footholds and better territory, and kick the Union out of those positions, or where possible, wiping whole units. This is a battle that encourages patience, mostly because the terrain, once you can get yourself in the right position, is so nearly impossible to attack, that it sort of strongly encourages, I think, a commander to view it as segments that you conquer. And you see I'm continuing to sort of shore up my foothold along the edge of the swamp there, and I'm going to continue trying to treat my northern command, which is around Boatswain's Wood. You see me continue to work on shoring up that as well. All of the new reinforcements coming in from 2 Corps are moving to support that, while I go ahead and still work on trying to squirrel away more and more captured units, a supply wagon here, a supply wagon there, a small unit of skirmishers here, just that sort of mentality. I'm trying to make sure that the Union's never comfortable where they're at. But this is a more measured version of aggression that you would have seen in my Union Major General campaign. At the Union campaign, I was very aggressive, and placed a lot of import on maintaining the momentum at an almost feverish pace. And I do the same here, but it's quite a bit more measured. And I just say it's like a degree of maturity as a commander, I think. I'm slowing down. I still feel like I'm keeping the momentum on the Union. I feel like they never have a chance to truly rest in this battle, except for when I'm still trying to figure out how to get around the flag towards the tail end of the fight. But at no time am I being passive. At no time am I being I don't know. At no time am I just passive. I am securing good terrain. I'm trying to move my battered infantry into positions where they can rest, and then move my rested infantry into places where they can fight. I'm trying to spread the casualties around as much as possible, with the exception of 25th and 26th militia. I don't want to put it, I guess there's not a better way to put it, but there's like no better example of the definition of chaff unit has ever existed. Like, they're using free guns that I picked up off the ground. They're unperked soldiers. They are using, I think they both have captains leading them. Like, they're there to occupy a spot in the line and get shot at, and that's exactly what they're doing. Apologies, I have a bit of a bug going around, I think. So yeah, we get units online, and now that I've got those reinforcements rolling in, which is to say 18th and 4th Ranger and 7th Infantry and 8th Infantry, now that I've got those units in position, I'm now feeling more comfortable advancing to the next stage of engaging the Union Army. And this is when I close the noose and try and really make sure that there's no returning for them. And then this is where I launch into a general engagement with them. So we're still trying to use the light troops and the 5th Infantry to ensure that this big-ass cav unit, this 1,000-man cav unit, never has the opportunity to enter in my backfield. That's where I would be particularly nervous about a cav unit, is as long as they have to contend with my front line, I'm never worried about cav, because they're a glass hammer. they can cause all kinds of damage, but you can't treat them. This is not Braveheart. You can't treat them like knights and just charge them against someone's front line, because they're just going to bounce off of formed infantry. And that's exactly what's happening. Is I've got a couple of light units and one admittedly battered heavy unit in cover uphill, blah, 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 right? And they're below me downhill, and they're in swamp, so they can't move. They can't move fast, and moving fast drains their stamina, condition, whatever, very quickly. So we, for the fifth or sixth time, kick someone out of that block of trenches next to my prepared positions, and I think like, oh great, finally I can advance because now I have more troops online. Notice that the front portion of the attack, the one most likely to bear the brunt of the enemy defensive efforts, is new units who've just gone on the board, new units who have no stars, new units who have, unimpressive guns. They've either got 1841s or they've got Mississippi rifles or something. So I'm trying to make the brunt of the fighting occur to chaff units, while the majority of the expensive units are able to fight defensively or fire from the flanks and that kind of thing. Keep my casualties on my expensive troops to a minimum, while keeping pressure on the Union Army pretty uniform across the entire frontage. I'm saved, I think, in this suicidal charge by Griffin, up just way out of position, just completely out of position. I don't know what the hell he's thinking. He comes screaming at me, and I just keep falling back with 25th Militia. Eventually he tires out, and eventually I detail units to go support 25th, and we are able to isolate and destroy Griffin, or push him back to joining the rest of the horde of Union soldiers who continue to retreat. But it's fascinating how single-minded the AI can sometimes be, especially in the rebalance mod. I think this is not a behavior pattern I tended to see from the AI in the vanilla game. They would, in my perception, they would have given up the ghost, so to speak, much earlier. But yeah, so the front line of the Union position has wavered, and they've fallen back, and I across the line aggressively push forward, continuing to try and occupy these elevated, wooded, covered positions, because they're just perfect for throwing back a Union counterattack. What's interesting is that one never really comes. I don't know if what exactly this is, but they acknowledge that they're beaten and then just give ground, and I don't know why that is the case. Now, admittedly, I've got a pretty imposing phalanx of gray-clad soldiers here, and you look at the terrain that we're commanding on a defensive nature, it is pretty commanding. It's got great lines of sight, it's got elevation and cover, and it's shooting into this just terrible defensive terrain. Like, if you're being pushed into this terrain, it's not good for you. It's not a good time to be a Union soldier right now. But this battle, I don't know, it seemed like it was a very lackluster defensive effort. I remember this being kind of touch and go a lot of the time against the vanilla AI, and this should basically be the vanilla AI. I don't think that J&P are doing much to the behavior of individual units. They're just giving them different perks and making them larger and that kind of thing, but the units themselves shouldn't, I don't think, be behaving much differently. I don't know. So there's some tweaking of my line that's going on right now to make sure that the units that are supposed to be covering the swamp are facing the right direction. I've got, units, artillery units moving into position to work as counter battery. And I realize I've got way more troops on my front line than I'm ever going to need. So I detail 8th Infantry to go north and support the 2 militia units that are off against Carlisle, with the thought process that Griffin. Neither of those 2 units is equipped to handle a 2-star brigade. They're just not. I presume those units have rifles. I presume those units are, going to be able to outshoot me, have better stats, so forth and so on. I just don't think that I can realistically fight that with 2 unperked militia units. So, yeah, we continue on the counter battery mission. We continue trying to push the Union out of really anywhere that's defensible. And now I'm starting to work on contracting my line again. So now that there's not really a fear in my mind of a concerted flank attack or an effort to try and get around my position, and the AIs become kind of passive, now I'm hunting down units where I can. So in this instance, I'm hunting down Farnsworth, the Cav unit, who used to be 1,000 men. And I'm hunting down Griffin because I want to wipe that squad as well, or brigade as well. There's also a general engagement, that's still occurring near the flag, but once again, I don't want to capture it. So I'm running the clock down. I'm destroying any portion of the enemy army that has become separated from the main host. I'm trying to limit their options. This is death by 1,000 paper cuts, death by attrition. We're not really engaged in sweeping, aggressive Napoleonic maneuver. There's some of that, but it's more just application of mass, application of force, and an efficient utilization of massed artillery on their artillery to make sure that they don't have the option of shelling me like I do them. Admittedly, I don't have a lot of really great counter battery assets, but I've got some. Those Jameses are going to do the trick, and then quantity has a quality all its own. If you don't have a tool that's dedicated specifically to the task, but you have enough tools that'll cludgily get the job done, you can usually just rely on that. So, yeah, there's not a whole lot of exciting stuff left. The remainder of the battle is cleanup. We get some more troops that are particularly useful because we finally get the remainder of the light division. And that's my sniper unit and some of the cav and that kind of thing. And they help wrap some of this stuff up. But long story short, we're going to shell them out of this position. They're going to fall back. And then in lieu of tripping the flag, I'm going to kind of, you'll see, I'm going to try and wipe up the entire army. And so we once again get 100% force destruction on this map. And we get, the perfect ratio of soldiers captured. We get just over 1,000. I'm aware that if I was to capture more, I might get a better chance at some of the rifles that they carry, and that's certainly a consideration. But let's have a discussion about why not. Let's tweak away from a play-by-play because there's not really much else to say. Any interesting maneuver has occurred, and now it's just math, numbers grinding them out. So why not just trip the flag? Why not, end the mission early, limit my casualties, so forth and so on? Why not? And the answer is because there's still probably 10,000 Union infantry on the ground, if not more. I'm eyeballing 8 right now. And there's, so like 10,000. And there's 1,500 artillery men who are manning, call it 1,500, like 30 guns, give or take. So that's why is I'm going to go straight from this fight to Malvern Hill, and I need that force pool reduced as much as possible. However, even more than the force pool, I need guns. And I know I'm going to get some at the end of this battle, right? Because the store resets, and I've got some points in logistics, so we're going to have, or economy, or whichever one increases the number of guns you have in the store. I've got some points in those things. So we're going to have decent access to weapons. And we're going to get some reputation perks. I think reputation says that we get, actually I know it because I played this yesterday. I played this battle last night. So reputation is going to be 2 separate 7-point cards. And if you play them, it costs you a net of, I think, 14 rep, which is a lot. But out of the deal, you get something to the effect of 3,500 Enfields, which is totally worth it because as far as I'm concerned, the bonus points towards morale from reputation aren't worth shit. You only want to avoid, if you can, a sufficiently big negative. I don't worry too much about -1, but a higher negative is more dangerous. And the only reason you would want to preserve, in my mind, a large budget surplus of reputation is if you're concerned about losing a battle, because you might be able to survive a loss with a bad rep. But I think it's very easily possible to win this game, win the campaign without ever losing a battle. So, honestly, if you do lose, like, save or reload the save and try again and use what you learned from the last playthrough to give it another go. Unless you're role playing, where you're stuck with the outcome of any individual battle, re-rack and try again. So, rep cards, rifles, I view them as being like very worth it to use them for guns. And in the vanilla game, I would never have spent reputation on an officer. In the rebalance mod, I sometimes think about it because they're very expensive for money, and they're good. The other reason I don't want to trip the flag is, so I want to capture guns, which we do. I want to make the Union manpower pool as small as possible, which we also do. I want to get all of my units who are currently fighting plenty of kills, lots of experience, the opportunity for more stats, all that kind of stuff, which we do. But the other thing that I want to be doing is I have many underranked officers in this army. I have captains leading brigades. I've got majors doing the same. Majors aren't so bad, I suppose. But, it's bad. It's really bad. It's the officer management minigame as rebalanced or redesigned vis-a-vis the JNP rebalance mod is now far less. It's something I think about, and it really wasn't in the vanilla game. When I wrapped up my vanilla, I had the UI mod, but it didn't change anything else. So when I wrapped up my mostly vanilla Union Major General campaign, I had such a dearth of officers that I could have lost 10 and I wouldn't even have noticed. And it has really been an interesting change to be so concerned about having enough officers to staff my army. I had the money, I had the guns to field more units of this battle, but I didn't have the men to lead them. So there's this very interesting, weird change in the way that I think about battles, where it's not just how many men do I kill? How many men do I lose? How many guns do I lose? I never used to care about the officers. It's whatever. I'll figure it out. But here, my gosh, it's a real problem, guys. It's very cool. Additionally, it's a bitch and a half to get anybody over the rank of colonel. I have division commanders and unit officers who've been around here since the battle at Potomac Fort. Sam Cable was a major at that battle. He's still a colonel. I've had colonels, admittedly, I've had some colonels killed out from under me. That's incredibly frustrating. Division commanders, dead in battles where I take 1,500 casualties. That also sucks. The officer management game, this will continue, I think, to be a problem for me. Well, actually, you know what? How much growing does the Confederate Army really do after Malvern Hill? So with the Union Army, I was able to play the whole campaign with 3 combat corps. And I probably could have gotten away with 2 and then 1 like shitty corps for major battles, and that's it. So I wonder how much growing am I really going to be doing after this point? And you'll notice it's why when the battle's over, it's why I put my perks into training for the exact same reason. These units, I'm going to be forming new units now, and then after second Bull Run, probably, it's going to be about maintenance. And so training is important for forming these new units that are going to be fighting for the first time. And training is also important for refilling those units. But the medical skill is going to take a significantly higher priority after second Bull Run, I think. Or maybe Antietam, I don't know. Around that time, though. Now, however, training and economics and stuff like that, it's important. Although I think the economics will take even higher importance as the campaign continues to advance. We do this nonsense where we just kind of run them down and shoot them. It's not very exciting to watch. There's an opportunity to discuss meta, the meta strategy game right now, which is great. So the last reason I didn't trigger the flag is that I want every unit here the opportunity to get experience, and I want every officer here the opportunity to level up or promote, especially all the captains, because I've got 4-ish captains running units right now who have absolutely no business running these units. I've got several light colonels running divisions, all of whom could stand to get promoted. And so part of experience is just raw, I think, time on the battlefield. Like there's experience that comes from doing stuff, shooting, moving, being in combat, all that shit. It gets you experience. Okay, fine. But I think there's also a degree of experience that's just simply hours in battle, or time in battle, time in the fight. So every unit that's present now, even my new units that came in off the top right of the screen a second ago, all they're doing is marching. All they do in this battle is march. But they're brand new. They've got low-level light colonels or majors leading them. They've got captains leading them. They're going to level up because evidently the amount of experience required to go from one level to the next is like parabolic or something, where I've got captains pretty routinely going straight from captain all the way through to like light colonel. But I've yet to generate a general. I've yet to have one homegrown show up. So on the one hand, it's great. I've got a bunch of really great colonels, which makes sense. Colonels lead units. But I have a surprising dearth, a surprising lack of flag grade officers, and it's going to make them very important figures in my campaign. I am going to be babying them, very concerned about, corps commanders. Once I get to the point where I've got, division level commanders who are at the flag rank or higher, it's going to be a gigantic issue if I ever lose one. Because generating a new one's going to be a huge pain in the ass. An interesting weird side effect is that so I took so many officers wounded in the course of Bull Run and Shiloh and the side battles that I go into this battle and I've got no officers left that I can use, and I'll come out of this battle in a few minutes here, and I'll have just 8 or 10 fresh officers ready to go at various ranks of colonel. And yeah, it's weird. It's weird. The officer mini game is weird. So yeah, I don't trip the flag because I want to inflict all these casualties, and I want their guns, and I want their experience, and I want all that, and I want the units to have the experience from just walking around, like that's all I need them to do. So, yeah. When we wrap this up here in a minute, the boys come down. I charge the cav in, because they need to level their cavalry stat up, and they need some more experience too. And evidently a light colonel can't run this big a unit of cav. We capture one of these two, which is also a great deal. But this is it. This is pretty much the battle. And we don't actually capture the last flag. We had 27-ish minutes left, and there's the fight. So there's just under 3,000 Confederate casualties taken, and just over 19,000? No, 18,000. Somewhere in there inflicted. So a really great ratio. But what's also cool is look at all these promotions. A bunch of units get crazy promoted. There's a couple captains that make it all the way to light major or light colonel. Several make it just straight to major. That's it. We get, I think, 1 or 2 wounded. Pretty good. I'm okay with it. We capture, like I said, some parrots, some 3-inch ordnance, and we capture a brigade and a half's worth of Springfield 61s, which is great. We get a lot of supplies captured, and but this battle, I don't think it could have gone better. This is even better. I got a colonel out of the deal, AP Hill. The battle, I don't think it could have gone better in terms of, like, I suffered very light casualties, and as much as it pains me, they're really concentrated in the militia, whose job it was to do exactly that. So let's take a look at what they get. So they have elite brigades, crack, and then raw recruits. So they're getting a little over 20,000 new soldiers, roughly a third of whom are experienced, and then the remainder aren't. They're getting a debuff to army size and weapons quality as a fact of running all the previous battles, and it's the same army size. We can bring a minimum of 2 corps and up to 4. I sincerely doubt we're going to bring 4, but yeah, there you go. There is the thought of maybe running smaller corps. I had thought about that, but I run into the issue that I lack the officers to run them, so or they're expensive to set up. So 6 artillery is a long-range counter battery unit with the James gun, and we're going to go ahead and give them long-range focus. And then, yep, there's the 3,500 Enfields I can bring. Super cool. So not 11, 14, but I have 22 left to spend. And then basically all the infantry get the arm perk, and that arm perk gives them better accuracy with muskets. Yeah. As you can see, though, like, these units took very light casualties, very light losses, which is excellent. Super cool stuff. And unfortunately, as you can see, no one promoted to general. So the process to become a general is apparently pretty stringent. And I put the 2 points into training because I'm going to be doing some more expanding for the Army. And then I think after this, the next goal is to work on medicine, for more of the same reason. So training is to grow it, and then medicine is to maintain it, basically. We're going to go ahead and buy some more artillery and all that kind of stuff. We'll take care of it off screen, and I will see you guys at Malvern Hill. This is Fiasco. Hoping you have a good one. Signing out.